Yes, yes. This is just a brief illustration of the problem of classifying apes and people, and it's illustrated. If you ever go to the Natural History Museum in London, you'll see one of their big exhibitions, which they've had going for a while, is actually called Human Evolution. And at the entrance to this, you are confronted with this great wall of human evolution. Now, notice along the left-hand side there, they've got age ranges in the evolutionary timetable. And a lot of these classifications are to do with how old these things are believed to be, rather than what's the actual evidence in terms of fossils and bones that they've dug up. In general, you can see there are three main groups. We'll only look at two of these. One is the ones they call humans, and the other is another, which is the group at the top left-hand corner. And the other group is what they call Australopithecines. Now, you've probably heard of some of these. Now, you may not have heard of all of these sort of big, long names here, but you've probably heard of this one. This is the most famous, Australopithecus afarensis. In fact, this creature is better known as Lucy. Now, notice this is, if you go into the exhibition after passing through the Great Wall of Evolution there, they have the rest of the bones of this creature here, and notice the label there, an ancient relative called Lucy. So in the popular literature and the popular presentations, this creature is put forward as, well, a human relative. Not quite human, but definitely a relative, so part of our family. But that requires you to have this evolutionary mindset that somehow human beings are just animals and we are all connected. Now, that is a flat denial of what is written in the Bible, and it's important that people who want to try and put evolution and creation together remember that. Now, if we just go back to that previous slide and remember some of the skulls that John held up there, I do give credit to the Natural History Museum. They have actually shown the difference between what was actually found and what has been used to fill in the gaps between what they've actually found. Now, notice here that the light brown bits in this particular skull are what has actually been found. The dark brown shiny bits are what has been filled in. Now, notice how much has been found and how little it is compared with the entire skull. So a lot of these so-called hominids and human ancestors, there's an awful lot of imagination that's been put in between the actual finds. But let's go back to the idea of this as an ancient relative. Lucy is the nickname for this creature. It was given to it by the team that dug it up, and was apparently inspired by the pop song by the Beatles, "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds," that they were playing while they were in their camp there. Anyway, this fossil, they claim, confirmed that our ancient relatives walked upright. Well, that's actually disputed. Now, notice then they say the small skull, the long arms, and the conical rib cage are like an ape. Now, that should be a signal alarm bell straight away. They say she has a more human-like spine, but there's an interesting little article we have in our fact file where they took a close look at these spine bones, and they were not found all together. They are individual bones that have been put together, and they decided that one of the bones actually was probably a baboon bone. So there's a lot of wishful thinking has gone in here, where you find a collection of isolated bones and you put them together. And the same with the pelvis and the knee. They were not found together. And if we look at the whole skeleton here, you can see a lot of the bones are broken. So they do have to put them together again, like a three-dimensional jigsaw. And but notice they said the skull was very ape-like, and it certainly is, where they have got bits of it. But particularly there, you can see the shape of the jaw. It's a very V shape that is very distinctive of an ape jaw. It's not at all like a human jaw, which has a much, well, it has a parabolic shape, which is a rounded shape. So that brings us back to our genus and species classifications. The proper name for this is Australopithecus afarensis, and that literally means southern ape, from afar. So the evolutionists themselves admit this is an ape. Austral means southern, right, as meaning southern hemisphere, not just the country of Australia. So, and Pithecus means ape. So anything that gets called Australopithecus is an ape. It is fully ape, and afarensis just refers to where they found it. Now, one of the reasons they say that Lucy is a relative who was evolving into a human being and walked upright is that they found some footprints which have been ascribed to Australopithecus afarensis. Now, they can't be from the original Lucy skeleton because it was actually found in another country. It was sort of hundreds and hundreds of miles away. But these things were found in Laetoli, and their footprints, so they had to be buried quickly, as we've talked about in some of our other programs, but they are very distinctively human-like. However, for the evolutionists, that's a problem because they are found in rocks that have been dated as over 3 million years ago, which is the same evolutionary date that's been given to the Australopithecines. And also before they believe that modern humans evolved. So how are they going to classify these things? Well, this is one of the excuses that's used to say that Australopithecines walked upright, because whoever made these footprints certainly did walk upright. And we've written about these a few times. There have been more of them studied and found ever since the original ones were. This is a cast at the Natural History Museum of these, but they've found more of them. And even the evolutionists admit these would not attract attention on a modern beach. In other words, if you're walking along on a modern beach and left your footprints, they would look much the same as the Laetoli footprints. So they're definitely human footprints, but they don't want to admit that because they are trapped into the evolutionary timetable. So you need to take that into account as to how they're classifying things. It's not just from the shape of the bones, it's also from what they already believe in terms of the evolutionary timetable. So let's go back to our Australopithecines. So all of these things are apes. They're fully apes. And some of them we only have sort of rather fragmentary or just pieces of them. We don't have entire skeletons. But they are definitely apes. So anything that's called Australopithecus is an ape. Now, here's one that's got a little bit more publicity more recently, Australopithecus sediba, and it was proclaimed to be a missing link. That term has been thrown around, well, ever since evolution, human evolution became popular, of course, and every now and again someone thinks, oh, we found this missing link. So this creature, which was found more recently than Lucy goes back quite a few decades, this one was considered to be the first of the apes that was turning into people when they just found its skull, and also a rather disarticulated hand. They have since found a lot more bones, and this goes back to our problem that we talked about with Neanderthals. When you find more bones of them, they fall into being fully ape or fully human. And it's the same with this one, considered to be the best evidence for an ape that was starting to turn into a person. But when they found more bones of it, and even then, notice they don't even have an entire skeleton, and I do give credit to the Natural History Museum. They do actually show what were the bones and parts of bones that were found and which are the bits that were filled in. Now, the two limb bones, matching them by mirror imaging is quite reasonable, because we know from real whole skeletons that the two limbs, right and left, are mirror images of one another. So that's quite a reasonable thing to do. But notice that none of the bones are really intact. They've all got bits missing, so they have to be filled in. So when they got the whole skeleton of this, it has a brain size of about 420 cubic centimeters. That is about the same as a chimpanzee. A human brain is 3 times that. It had arms and legs of ape-like proportions, and that's why it's important to have entire skeletons, because it's not just the individual bone shapes you need to look at, it's also the proportions of the arms and legs. And they're very different in apes than they are from human beings. It had long curved fingers, suitable for grasping branches, and it had ape-like shin bones and an ape-like heel bone. Even though apes do have what's called a plantigrade foot, they walk with their heel flat on the ground, but the heel has an elongated shape, which is quite different to a human one, because they don't have an arch in their foot. So let's go back to the Great Wall of Evolution and look at some of these ones that they've classified as humans. Now, we've talked about Neanderthal. That's the one that's up in the top left-hand corner. The light-coloured one that's right up there in the middle there, that's Homo sapiens. That's considered to be us. Now, that classification, Homo sapiens, sapiens, as John said, does actually mean wise. So I used to tell my students, okay, Homo sapiens, wise man. If you really want to know what the Bible says about people who call themselves wise, there's a lesson to be learnt there. I didn't tell them what it was. I'm not sure that any of them bothered to look it up, but it is a lesson to be learned, that those who call themselves wise sometimes turn out to be fools. And for the reason that they find a small amount of evidence and they jump to some very big conclusions. Now, there's one Homo here that, again, is disputable in terms of classification. And if you look over on the right-hand side, there's this one here, Homo floresiensis. I don't know whether you remember, this one got a fair bit of publicity because it was given the nickname the Hobbit. Now, the term floresiensis refers to where it was found. A lot of species names refer to where a fossil is found, or it's sometimes named after people. Or so Homo floresiensis, found on the island of Flores, which is a tiny island in Indonesia. Now, here's a question for you. This is just its skull that they've got there, and it's actually quite small. But they have found some more of these bones, but not an entire skeleton. This is not a particularly good picture of it, because it is in a glass case in a very dark corner in the Natural History Museum, so I didn't get a very good shot of it there. But after they found the original bones, they went back to the various caves where this thing was found, and they have studied the individual bones and how they fit together. Now, what would you call a creature that has the brain the size of a chimpanzee, a jaw like a southern ape, right? That's like an Australopithecine, right? Arms like a gibbon or a monkey, legs like a chimpanzee or an orangutan, body proportions of a southern ape, and the body mass, in other words, they've estimated the total body mass of this thing. It was called the Hobbit because it was fairly short. It was about 3 feet tall, right? Because we have arm and leg bones, we can actually look at the and skull. We can look at the brain to body proportions and the arm to leg proportions, and they turn out to be similar to a chimpanzee or a southern ape. Now, if a creature has all of these characteristics, what would you call it? It's obviously an ape. So why is it called Homo? Again, it's that dating problem. It's called Homo floresiensis right here because it is dated as being quite young in the evolutionary timetable. In fact, the bones are sort of barely fossilized in terms of not being really petrified. So they're very, very fragile. And in the cave where this thing was found, it's classified as being a lot younger than the Australopithecines, which are classified as being three or so million years old. So again, things get classified because of a priori beliefs that this thing was found in a young formation, therefore it has to be Homo, whereas the Laetoli footprints were found in an old formation, so they have to be Australopithecine. So we're not really looking at the actual evidence in terms of what was dug up in isolation. It is looked at in terms of the evolutionary mindset. In other words, in a priori beliefs. So there is no excuse for actually calling the hobbit Homo. It should be classified amongst the Australopithecines. Now, all of these other things are actually fully human, as in the Neanderthals, or they are a mix of ape and human bones. And if you look at the one that's over on the right-hand side that has this great big white blotch in it, again, that's the Natural History Museum being quite honest. This was a find that got a fair bit of publicity a while ago called Homo naledi, which was a great big mass of disarticulated bones that were found in a cave in southern Africa. And they fitted these together to make some sort of partial human. But they never actually found jaw bones and the cranial part, the cranium, the top part of the skull, that actually fitted together. And if you look at this great big mass of bones, some of them were ape and some of them were fully human.